Hey guys, welcome back. So, in lesson one, we talked all about alignment and how important it is for us to be aligned to who we are so we can therefore then step in to be our most authentic self and have that expression of being who we are. Today, we're going to be talking about allowance. Um, this really is the meat of it all. This is, in my opinion, this is where the good work happens when we begin to allow. Okay, so allowance is basically giving ourselves permission to be as we are in any given moment. Okay, the beautiful thing about that is we're giving ourselves permission to exist. Oftentimes what happens in our journey of life and becoming who we are is we experience things that are undesirable, whether it be about people around us, our experiences of ourselves, and we deem them as undesirable, and then we do things to try and change. Okay, and I know this journey all too well because shame told me for so many years that I needed to be fixed, that there was things about me that weren't acceptable, so I needed to work hard to fix who I was. And when we approach life this way, we're approaching ourselves with resistance, right? I don't like who you are, so I'm going to do everything in my power to change you, right? Do you relate to that experience? And if you do, then this episode is, or this teaching today is going to have a large impact on you, because allowance is going to be about giving yourself permission to be who you are. Give yourself permission to feel what you feel and to think what you think, right? This is important because when we do that, we start to align, because we're no longer rejecting ourselves, we're no longer trying to change ourselves, and we're just allowing ourselves to be. Okay, and oftentimes people think, well, why would I want to allow myself to be in shame? Why would I want to allow myself to be in sadness? Right? All of these experiences that we have that we feel really uncomfortable in, that we feel that they're undesirable. Well, the answer is because we're human beings, right? We're meant to have these experiences. We're meant to share in these experiences so we can relate through empathy and compassion and whatnot. But what makes these experiences more painful is the judgment that we have of them, and we try to change them. And when we have an experience of something and we try and change it, we put resistance up to it, okay? And if you think about when we're sad and we try and do things in our environment to change it, that sadness is still there. Okay, if we understand that energy or emotions are energy in motion. They're particles of energy that are moving, right? When we have sadness, it's energy, right? And when we cry, the energy comes out. We have an expression of energy, and when that energy is discharged, it's gone, right? But when we have sadness come up and we choose to eat or distract ourselves or whatever, that energy still stays inside of us. Okay, call it like the onion layer of who we are, and we all do this. There's not one person in this world that doesn't do this, right? It's called repression, where we're just not in the mood to sit with ourselves and we just distract ourselves. But what we need to understand is that this creates layers of unprocessed and unresolved emotions inside of us that we experience as pain, stress, fear, shame. All of these things become stacked inside of us, okay? So the beautiful thing about allowance is we're giving ourselves space and permission to experience what we need to experience. And we don't have to really go back into the past and like feel all those things again. But what you'll notice when you start to give yourself permission to experience and feel again is you'll have this old stuff come up naturally. You don't need to go looking for it. It's going to naturally come up. And this can be done through breath work. This can be done through stillness, through yoga, anything that where you're allowing yourself to just be. You're going to notice that you're going to have this beautiful experience of release. That's what this is about. So we're allowing ourselves to be who we are so we can release the things that are no longer serving us, so we can then start to attract the things that are going to serve us. So why is allowance beneficial on the journey towards authenticity? The simple reason is basically if authenticity is the expression of alignment, we need to become aligned. And if we're always trying to change ourselves and we're always trying to fix ourselves and be someone else and live up to everybody's expectations, we're no longer aligned, right? So if we have experiences come up, specifically I'm talking about emotions and feelings that come up, because this is where we become unaligned, right? We push the things away we don't want to experience. We try and bring in the things that we do want to experience, and we create so much imbalance in ourselves and in our lives. So the gift of allowance, of allowing ourselves to just be and allowing ourselves to feel, is we start to connect to this deeper part of who we are, this essential, right? The essence of who we are, this essential part of who we are. That's where we become aligned, and that's the person and the energy to which we're going to be able to be more authentic from. So one thing I want you to know about allowance and about repression and kind of the old feelings, the old thoughts and feelings that we have inside of us, when they start to come up, our response to them is going to be key. Okay, someone who's practicing allowance is going to allow them to come, maybe practice some breath, maybe move the energy. And people who are practicing resistance or distraction or repression, they're going to shove it back down, right? So you feel tears coming up, you shove it back down. You feel anger come up, you shove it back down. And what we're doing is we're just repressing. We're repressing the emotions back down. So what we need to learn is how to allow them to come up and change how we view the arising emotions. Because oftentimes what we think is, okay, here comes this old emotion, this old thought that I'm thinking, it's coming back up again. I thought this was done. I thought we were done with this shit. You know what I mean? That's often what we judge. And we say, I thought we were done with this. Why is this coming back up again? But it's coming back up again because it's trying to release. Okay? And what we can do when it comes up is we can smile and we can be grateful and we can say thank you. Right? Thank you for leaving my body. Thank you for trying to leave my body. Okay? And it's our job to allow it to leave. Right? So when it comes up, instead of shoving it back down, allow it to be there. And you're going to notice that within 5 or 10 minutes of you giving yourself permission to feel, it'll be gone. Okay? I like to use the example and the metaphor of food poisoning. Okay? Think about it like this. We eat something that's gone rancid, and it goes inside of our belly, and it starts to create all of this tension and this nausea, and then we vomit, right? We purge and we allow it to go. Okay, so think about that, the example of the emotions, right? We have an experience, it comes in, we consume the experience, whether it's trauma or abuse or whatever it might be, and we digest it, it goes in, and it's sitting in us just no different than rancid food, and it's causing us issues, right? And then when it tries to come up, we put it back down, Why? Okay, our body has an intelligence. It purges rancid food. It's also trying to purge the emotions that are no longer serving the body. Okay, so think about that. Next time you have an emotion that comes up, think about it like rancid food. It's trying to leave your experience, right? And after you're done purging, there's like a relief. And you're like, oh my God, thank God, I've got that gross food out of my system and I can start to heal. Okay, that's what this journey is about. It's about purging the things that are no longer serving you. So what I do when these things come up for me, and this is not an easy thing to do, okay, because when it's overwhelming and this energy is coming up and you're feeling intense shame or sadness or fear or grief or whatever it is that you've been pushing down, our natural inclination is not to smile, but I always say try and smile and have gratitude, because you know what? It's releasing and it's clearing space inside of you for new experiences to come in. Right? If we're holding on to all this old pain, we don't have capacity for new experiences, people, connections, any of that sort of stuff to come in, because we're so full of stress and anxiety and depression and all the things that these unprocessed experiences are creating for us, okay? So the best gift you can give yourself is the gift of release through allowance. So something that really gets in the way of people being able to allow is going to be resistance, control, judgment of the experience. So what we want to practice is surrender. Okay, surrender is going to be a very big component of allowance, right? Because with allowance, we have something comes up, it feels overwhelming for us, and we can choose to grab on and try and navigate our way through it. But that leads to more anxiety, more depression, more of all the things we're trying to get away from. So surrendering is literally just saying, okay, I feel this experience and I'm just going to allow it, right? So allowance and surrender are kind of synonyms. They're very, very similar. And oftentimes people really struggle with the idea of surrender because they think that when they surrender, that they're allowing they're giving permission for the experience to be there, right? Because they think that otherwise the experience wouldn't, but the experience is still there. It's subconsciously there, or it's consciously there, and you're still experiencing it. So why would we try and change something that we have no control over? The only thing we have control over in this journey is going to be to surrender and allow it to move. Okay, and you'll notice when you start to do that, it's going to be a game changer, because we've been taught for so many years and you know, to control and to try our best to not have these experiences because they're crappy to have. But we need to understand that part of the human experience is to have undesirable emotions, and we wouldn't understand joy if we didn't understand fear, right? We wouldn't understand self-love if we didn't understand shame. So we need those polar experiences to teach us. But we can spend more time in the positive emotions if we allow the negative emotions to release. If we don't, and we hold on with fear of having to experience them, you're combating fear with more fear that leads to more fear, right? So we need to make sure that we're allowing ourselves through surrendering to the experience, and you're gonna process this stuff very, very quickly and start to create space inside you that's gonna be a phenomenal experience. Why don't we do this? Second reason is because our ego doesn't want to have the experience, right? Our ego is the mechanism inside of ourselves that we've created that tells us that we need to seek as much pleasure as possible and we need to avoid as much pain as possible, right? The ego has been developed to try and protect us from doing that, but what the ego does is actually quite the opposite. It creates more for us. It brings us further and further away from our authenticity. So the surrender I speak of is surrendering your mind to your body, okay? Surrendering your mind to your heart, whatever you want to call it. But really, we experience the states of love, joy, allowance, all of these beautiful experiences that we get to experience in the human being that are states, not emotions, because joy, love, those things aren't emotions that we feel. Lust is an emotion we feel. Happiness is an emotion we feel. But joy and love are two completely different things. They're states that we get to feel, right? And so when we come down into the body, we get to have those experiences. We get to transmute all those things. We give ourselves a break from the chatter of the mind, right? The incessant mental chatter that just goes and goes and goes and goes. And if you're somebody that's suffered with insomnia, there's no better way to deal with insomnia, which is incessant mental chatter and can't shut off the mind, than allowance. Allow the mind to run wild. And all you do is draw your attention down into your body. The mind can do whatever it wants. We're not trying to stop the mind, because the mind will never stop, right? We don't want this mind to stop, because the mind is beautiful. It does so much for us. But we need to learn how to draw our attention away from it and put our attention down into our bodies. That, my friends, is what I'm talking about when it comes to surrender. Okay, we're drawing our attention, we're playing with our attention, I call it our inner gaze. We're taking our inner gaze from drawing upwards into the mind and we're drawing it downwards into the body. That's an act of surrender, and that's an act of allowance, because the body has a natural intelligence. It's nature, right? That we don't control. The only thing we think we control is our minds, and our body just does what our body does. Okay, and that's going to teach you. The body, when you tune into the body and you move from the head into the heart, the body will naturally teach you what surrender feels like, what allowance feels like, because we're no longer thinking we need to change the present moment by being anywhere other than where we currently find ourselves, right? That's the suffering that we create for ourselves, and that's the act of resistance that we bring into the moment, right? The present moment happens in the body. It happens in the experience that we have in our body, and the past and the future happens in the experience we have in our minds, right? We have an experience, and if we stay in that experience, we stay in the present moment. And if we are out of that experience and we're now thinking about the experience we just had, or we're thinking about the future and what we could have, we're pulled ourselves out and we're now in our mind identification, right? So if we want to learn to allow, we need to become more present, right? We need to stay with our experience when we're having it, and we need to stay in the moment without looking to the future, right? We often think that the future is going to bring us some more desirable experience, right? We all think that. We think that the future is going to bring us this desirable experience, so we got to start looking forward now, because the present moment isn't enough. And when we say the present moment is enough, we're saying that we're not enough, because we are the present moment. We are that energy, right? So when we can draw our attention back from past and future and into the present moment. It's the exact same thing as drawing yourself from your head down into your heart. So it's about playing with your attention. Okay, where am I going to focus? Am I going to focus on the past or the future, or am I going to focus on the now? When you focus on the now, you surrender, you allow, and you step into your authenticity. So I want to share another quote with you guys from my book, Be the Space. It says, attention is the key to transmuting these emotions. Up to this point, you have swept them under the rug and they lay at the access point to your truth. They are waiting to be honored and released so you can step into all that you are. Remember that emotions are just energy that need to be given permission to be released. When we sweep things under the rug, we bring resistance into our experience, and we cannot resist and surrender at the same time. We first must bring acceptance to the resistance of these emotions, and then they will resolve on their own. You do not have to relive the past that caused these emotions, because this causes more pain and suffering and just reinforces the repressive behaviors that we are trying to resolve. Acceptance is the only way to clear the emotions that are holding you back from your inner body experience. Ask yourself each day, what do I need to accept in this moment? Not in the past, because that can only be accepted by accepting the present. The continuum of time you have been identifying with for so long is an illusion and has tricked you into thinking there is something to resolve in the past before you can create a better future. The illusion is that nothing about that involves the present, and that is the only place that healing and transformation can occur. So basically that just summarizes everything I just spoke about, right? How can I allow more in this moment, or what can I allow more in this moment? Ask yourself that question. Acceptance, allowance, very similar things. That question is going to have a very large impact on your development and moving towards being more authentic. Okay, so today's skill to practice is going to be spend time each day allowing yourself to be. Okay, so you can connect to your tension and release it. Tension is going to be the language your body speaks to you when you're not allowing your emotions to move. When you're not feeling your feelings, they stay stuck inside of us as tension. So wherever you're feeling tension in your body, bring your attention there and find a practice, whether it be yin yoga or meditation or stillness or going for nature walks, whatever it might be, that's going to allow you to connect to that tension. Because when you connect to it and you no longer turn a blind eye to it, it's going to allow it to move. Right? When we give something, what's the saying? Wherever our attention goes, energy follows, right? So if we want to move that energy, we need to give it our attention. So sit with yourself, give yourself the space to feel your feelings, and it's going to have a profound impact on moving into the most authentic you. Today's affirmation, again, always place your hands on your heart. Take a deep breath, let it go, ground yourself. And today's affirmation is, it is okay to feel the way I am feeling. And if I allow it, it will release. Okay? Such a beautiful thing, because again, it's about giving yourself permission to feel. If you're feeling it and you're thinking it, it's valid. It's meant to be. So allow it to be and quit putting up walls and resistance to it, and you're going to notice it'll be a game changer for you. Okay, guys, have a beautiful day. Looking forward to seeing you in lesson 3.